I used to be anxious when the shadow lay on Mirkwood, but when it removed to Mordor, I did not trouble for a while. Mordor is a long way away, but it seems that the wind is setting east, and the withering of all woods may be drawing near. There is naught that an Ent can do to hold back the storm. He must weather it or crack.
Welcome to the Wayward Wizards podcast. Today we're reading Book 3, Chapter 4 of The Two Towers, Treebeard. I love this chapter, Zach.
I do too, man. This is a long chapter, though. It's a really long chapter.
It's long. I think there's a lot of magic in it, in Treebeard's little asides and the little, hanging out in ant houses and things like that I really love. But part of me was like, I don't know. It feels a little bit like we're back in the Shire. You know what I mean?
Yes. If Tolkien ever needed an editor, it is in this chapter. 100%.
Yeah, I think it would have been really effective to start a chapter with a pretty condensed version of this, potentially.
Right.
And then give us, Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli. Potentially, like I could just see like rewriting it and and maybe even just going like back and forth, like giving them like 5 pages at a time or something like that.
Yeah.
That's how you would do it in a modern novel, I guess. To really like keep it snappy. But it wouldn't be The Lord of the Rings without that kind of funny, just funny pacing, odd pacing. And so I guess I accept it as for what it is.
I was listening to it while I was cooking in the kitchen on Audible on my Alexa. And on the Alexa, like Audible app, you're not able to listen to it at faster speed. So It was like being read at normal speed is the Andy Serkis version. And it was the song that Treebeard is singing where there's the Treebeard part or where there's the Ent part and the Entwives part.
Yes.
And it was just, oh, bo, 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 boom, bo, boom, bo. Entwives. Oh, bo, 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 bo.
I think you're even speeding it up a little bit. He's completely God love him. Serkis just completely sells out on oh my God, all the way. And it's beautiful, but yeah, it's long.
But I was trying to cook dinner and it was really pushing my patience. I mean, I was just like, it was about 5 minutes in and I was just like, oh my God, like this, like, if I was reading this with my eyes, I would just skip past this part and get to what Merry and Pippin have to say.
Right.
But I finally turned it off and my mom was visiting from the living room. I hear her go, what the heck was that? She's like,
what is he listening
to in there? Oh my God, it was unbearable. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Is that like Merry and Pippin are falling asleep too. I mean, it's not exactly riveting stuff. We're listening to a tree talk. So
yeah.
I think that's part of the charm of it.
I think so too. I really love Treebeard's Boo-Rah rooms and it makes me, it makes me think of my uncle Ron, who loves Ents, and he has like certain trees all around his property that they live out in the woods, and he has certain trees all around his property that he calls they're the Ents. Not every tree, just a few, and it's talking to him is a little bit like talking to an Ent, so it makes me feel a little homesick, reading Treebeard.
Uncle Ron,
it'll always. It'll always remind me of him. So yeah. As much as there's part of me that I read it and I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. I think that if you let yourself immerse yourself in it, it really is. You really feel like you're there in Fangorn with Merry and Pippin.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and Tolkien, like this is what makes Tolkien special. I mean, like love it or hate it. The thing that people always say about Tolkien is that he's really great at describing nature.
Yeah.
And like, this is what they're talking about when they talk about Lord of the Rings being hard to read because he's spending so much time describing like the flora.
Right.
Like this is the chapter they're talking about. But yeah, if you can get through it, there's a real beauty to it. But I think this must be what it was kind of like to hang out with Tolkien in real life.
I wonder that too. It does feel like a little bit of him on the page.
Like kind of famously, he would go on these hikes with C.S. Lewis and other Inklings, and they were just like Tolkien, hurry it up, man. Like he would just stop every 5 seconds to look at a new tree.
That's
And
funny.
they would just want to be like going forward to the next pub, and he'd just be, back behind him, just, just looking up at a different tree. And so, yeah, I do think that he really just genuinely loved trees. Another like kind of like biographical fact that has kind of come up in my reading on Tolkien that I thought was worthy of bringing up is just like the source of the Ents. When Tolkien was young, he went and saw a production of Macbeth, and there's a scene in Macbeth where the forest is marching, and then it's revealed at the end of the play that it was actually just men holding branches to make it look like the forest was moving. And Tolkien always felt cheated by that.
Yeah.
And he was like, why not just have the forest actually move? Like, why not have the forest that can march?
Right.
And so the Ents are kind of his attempt at that. And it wasn't always in the drafts of Lord of the Rings. It didn't start with the Ents. It started out with a giant character who was evil and bad. And that giant sort of transformed into what would become the character of Treebeard.
Yeah, I love that he sort of reconsidered that, and gave it like a heroic character, right? Someone who marshals forces against Saruman, and that really plays a pivotal role. And to just have it could have been sort of an action beat or a scary thing, right, with the giants.
Yeah.
But I think he always, we talk about this a lot, but I think he always chooses the most interesting possible option. It's a fantasy world, so all of it is like everything's on the table in a way. But we already kind of know about giants from fairy tales and stuff like that. Like, I don't think anybody ever thought about an Ent before Tolkien. I mean, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, like, but it just feels so unique what he lays out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so unique to Tolkien. It's like a quintessential character.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's why, it's so enjoyable. And I think most people, if you tell them to rank the top 10 things that they love about Lord of the Rings, the Ents are going to appear.
Absolutely.
If they like the Lord of the Rings at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a litmus test. If you like Ents, you probably like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, right.
What do you think? I know that it's not that the Ents aren't a metaphor for something, or the Ents aren't an allegory for something. But what do you think Tolkien is like getting at in this chapter?
It's not an allegory, but I do think it's a manifestation of nature, and even of like deep time.
Absolutely.
I think it's in the next chapter, but someone says that Treebeard is the oldest living thing on Earth.
Yeah, and I think that kind of begs the question. I mean, we've already had another character who was called eldest, which is Tom Bombadil. And I think there's lots of crossover between the characters of Treebeard and Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they hold kind of a similar weight in the story. They're these mysterious, older than old creatures. And I think we can get into an argument about who's older, Tom Bombadil or Treebeard. And I think that would kind of miss the point. I think their essence is very different. Like Tom Bombadil is, we think and the fact that we don't know is hilarious for sure.
Yeah, right.
He is like a timeless, immortal being who is like clothed in flesh. He's timeless, ageless. Goldberry calls him eldest. Treebeard was born.
Yeah, Treebeard. I guess he's the eldest of, or the oldest of, the
things that were born. Let's call it that.
And I was going to say of the sort of kind that we get a list of. He has a song about, right? The Ents, the elves, the Ents, the men, and then the dwarves. Well, and the dwarves, I guess, come before men. And then of course, the hobbits suggest a new line for the song to include them. I love that. He's like, well, we should be in here too.
The
how
Hole
about this?
Dwellers, yeah.
And so he's the oldest of like anything that has sort of like a
Birthday.
personality, like an enfleshed being,
Personhood,
right?
yeah.
Personhood that depends on being alive. All that being said, I think that there's definitely a manifestation of nature, of deep time,
Yeah.
of things that last. And there certainly are points in this chapter where Treebeard speaks out against those like Saruman who whose only goal is to dominate nature, who just see nature as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And I don't think that interpretations over the years that there's a sort of anti-industrial streak in Thor: The Rings are wrong.
No.
And I think I think if you take that out of this chapter, you've done a good reading.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's not an allegory. We can't say like, oh, okay, Treebeard is nature, or Treebeard is he's of nature, you know. But we can't say, okay, in the story Treebeard represents Tolkien, or Treebeard represents naturalism, or whatever.
Right.
But through his like ageless, timeless perspective on the way that things have changed and how fleeting the other characters in this world are and how timeless he is, I think we're able to make, conclusions about deep truths that, so it goes beyond allegory. I think it's things that are true that are reflected in him about the importance of the natural world, about the fact that just because something moves slower than us doesn't mean that it doesn't have a soul.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think that Tolkien's sort of predilection, right, to stop on a walk and stare at a tree.
Yeah.
He's sort of like giving as much time as he can to beholding something which doesn't really feel like it's alive necessarily, right?
Because it moves so slowly compared to us.
It's so slow, but it's growing, it's changing. It's just growing and changing at a pace that is so slow. And there's a way that Tolkien can kind of like press fast forward on that with an Ent and say like, this is what's important to me, is like paying attention to these things that are not hasty. Yeah. And we're so hasty. We're running around like, you should take time, to stop and listen to a tree and what it has to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that experiences time in a different way, but it's no less alive. And the way that we tend to, because we move so quickly, not see the natural world as like something that is worthy of our attention. We see it as a resource.
Yeah, it's almost like it doesn't exist until we turn to use it or something,
And unless it has some sort of like, function for us. And I guess that's how, like at one point he refers to Saruman as young Saruman, which I think is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Like young Saruman used to come and ask my leave as he walked through the forest, and he would ask me questions and I'd give him my wisdom. Yeah. But he refers to him as a neighbor a lot. He says like, he should know better because he's a neighbor.
Right.
And it's almost like it's my responsibility now to like rouse the Ents because my neighbor is the one who's screwing everything up.
Yeah. And Saruman had a like duty to neighborliness that he shirks.
Like he broke that trust, and therefore now I have to act. It's like Mordor is like really far away.
Yeah.
And, I was worried about everything that was going on in Mirkwood, and I didn't like it, but at the end of the day, it wasn't my mess to clean up, which is another like similarity between him and Bombadil. Like Bombadil's not running off to Mordor to fix anything. Like Bombadil's worried about his home.
I love that Treebeard says a couple things. He really gets going here.
Yeah.
And he says that in those days he was always eager to listen.
Yeah.
And then he says, I told him many things that he would never have found out by himself.
Yeah.
But he never repaid me. And then he says, I cannot remember that he ever told me anything.
Yeah.
So it's like Saruman's wisdom is like so limited, and he like locks himself up in that tower,
Yeah.
And that's like the end of Saruman. He's done once he does that.
Yeah.
Then he says, I think I now understand what he's up to. He's plotting to become a power, capital P, power,
Yeah.
and he has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things except as far as they serve him for the moment.
Yeah.
And now it's clear that he's a black traitor. He's taken up with foul folk, with orcs. And he even kind of starts becoming self-incriminating. He says, I've been idle and I've let things slip and it must stop.
Yeah. And it's like a long time coming, right? He's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I've watched him misbehave for too long, and I've let him cut down one too many tree.
Right.
That was my friend. And, for the sake of like peacefulness, I've been, letting things slide, but not anymore.
Right.
I can't march on Mordor, but I can march on Isengard. And that's when it boils over.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Entwives? What do you think that Tolkien is doing with the Entwives?
Oh, Zach, I think women are just so complicated. I mean, do you understand them? Because I don't. But I suspect that that's a little bit of what's going on here.
Like that Tolkien actually thought that?
Yeah, that it's something about, men are puttering around in their dens and women are out trying to make the world a better place, or an ordered place, or
Yeah.
or at least are here at home, setting things as they should be.
Yeah.
Householders or whatever. And that is so dated. I mean, the gender politics are like impossibly dated. If you read that into this, which I think it's there, but I could see an argument that that's not really what he's going for.
Yeah.
However, I get sort of a whiff of that kind of like, gosh, like women and men will just never see eye to eye, that kind of thing. And
he definitely thought that. And he
yeah.
definitely like structures his life around that worldview,
Yeah.
like he holds masculine friendship up as this
which we've talked about,
ideal.
that like romantic
Multiple times.
Yeah, chivalric kind of
Yeah.
a chivalric relationship with women, and a close, intimate relationship with men.
There's almost like a sense of like, for Tolkien and his friends, women are this beauty that is like, inaccessible to men. And so they're to be admired from a distance, but there's not an intimacy that crosses gender lines for Tolkien and his friends. In their Oxford Dons, one thing that a friend of mine pointed out is that Don, literally means like father.
Interesting.
Because these like Oxford Dons would have been priests. They would have all taken vows of celibacy.
Right.
Up until like very recently.
Yeah.
And so like it was very uncommon for Oxford Dons to be married at all. And that was just kind of baked into like the kind of the Oxford like milieu, was that it was the boys, and there was deep friendship, but they're like, women were not allowed in those circles. So I definitely think there is like, I think we can read into this like some gender politics. And I do think that Tolkien found women inscrutable.
Yeah.
But I think there's something deeper going on here though. I think
so too.
It's almost like a reflection on like the downfall that came from like the agricultural revolution. The downfall that came from the Entwives trying to be agriculturalists is really what, like, it's the difference between a shepherd and a farmer. It's like,
Right.
one is mobile and moving with the herd, and one is stationary, and being stationary comes with dangers.
I agree. I mean, I think that's a good reading. I think that you could read it as a Genesis retelling.
Yes.
Somehow gaining knowledge, the kind of knowledge you would need for an agricultural revolution, being cast out of the garden,
Yeah.
or the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Cain killing Abel is, I think, pretty clearly allegory about the way that cities and pastoralists came to a head. I don't know if Tolkien ever thought of feminism, um,
I don't think it crossed
and so,
his
and
mind.
so yeah, and so I do think that is, that's probably more what's at work here, than my sort of funny aside about women being a mystery. But he certainly takes his time telling us about it. He really wants us to know something about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a couple pages at least.
Tolkien was really against allegorical readings of his work, but I do think that it's a little naive because I think it's really like people, if you want to start getting like into like, what does this mean? What does this represent? Like people on Tolkien forums online will jump down your throat and be like, it's not allegory. It's not allegory. He was against allegory. But I think that is actually a little naive to have that really firm.
I don't know what's the point of that kind of like doctrinaire reading of Tolkien. Like Tolkien is like some kind of like archangel that like handed this down upon us, and we have to like go
He
by
had some stuff to say about the world.
Like I'm not gonna like tie my hands for a reading to say like, well, Tolkien said that I shouldn't read it that way, so I'm just not going to. It's like, well, that's the most boring way you can read any text, including Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, absolutely, and like it's impossible. I think this chapter and maybe the Scouring of the Shire are the two where it becomes impossible not to say, all right, like, what is Tolkien trying to say about the modern world?
Yeah.
In the Scouring of the Shire, it's very clearly, it has something to say about the way that he sees the world going, and like the problems of the modern world. And in this chapter, I think it similarly has something to say. Like it's like a mirror held up to the reader saying like, all right, are you like doing the same thing that Saruman is doing in how you treat the natural world?
Right.
Like, are you being a good neighbor to the forest? And it's a little Fern Gully, it's a little,
I love that. Yeah.
it's a little Captain Planet, but like, I think it's an important mirror to look into sometimes and say like, yeah, like, am I a friend of the forest? Like these trees, like we rely on these trees, and they're living things, and they move slower than us, but they have life in them. And I think it's a mistake just to see them as a commodity. And, I think because of Tolkien, a lot of people care deeply about the natural world. I think like because of chapters like this, there are people who have lived more deliberately. And I think that's a really great thing.
I definitely agree. Yeah.
So picking back up with the story, Merry and Pippin have just fled the Uruk-hai. They've gotten into the forest by this like absolutely miraculous escape. And they're just chattering away like hobbits do. We had that great bit last time where it's like anybody who walked up on these two guys would have no idea that they just had the worst 3 days of their life.
Yeah, I love that.
And they find themselves like on top of this like shelf.
Well, it's like a looking place for him.
It says, in the face of the stony wall, there was something like a stair, natural perhaps, and made by the weathering and splintering of the rock, for it was rough and uneven. High up, almost level with the tops of the forest trees, there was a shelf under a cliff. Nothing grew there but a few grasses and weeds at its edge, and one old stump of a tree with only 2 bent branches left. It looked almost like the figure of some gnarled old man standing there, blinking in the morning light. So is that Treebeard? Like, did they see Treebeard and not realize it?
I think they walk right past him. Yeah. That's how much he looks like a tree.
They finally like have some air because it's so stuffy. It's like dense and overgrown Fangorn. There's like a claustrophobic nature to Fangorn Forest. And, they finally are like, oh, thank God, like we have some air. And the sun shines on the forest, and Pippin sees the beauty of the forest for what it is. But then the sun goes back underneath the cloud. And Pippin said, I'm afraid this is only a passing gleam and we'll all go gray again. What a pity. The shaggy old forest looked so different in the sunlight. I almost felt like I liked the place. And that's when Treebeard comes in. Almost felt you liked the forest. That's good. That's uncommonly kind of you. Turn around and let me have a look at your faces.
He introduces himself so gently.
Yeah. There's also like a snarkiness though too, because he goes, I almost feel that I dislike you both.
Yeah.
But do not let us be hasty.
Right. He's gonna investigate first. He lifts them both up.
He's holding them not like roughly, but so firmly. He has like incredible strength that they feel. Yeah. And I almost wanted to compare this to the way that Grishnok lifted both of them, one under each arm in the last chapter. It's like Grishnok, you know, he wants to be strong.
Yeah.
Treebeard is strong, but there's like a gentleness in his strength.
I love the description of the way that he pays attention. Tolkien describes his eyes.
Yeah.
One felt as there was an enormous well behind them, filled up with ages of memory and long, slow, steady thinking, but their surface was sparkling with the present. And then at the end of that paragraph, it says that it feels like he was considering you with the same slow care that it had given to its own inside affairs for endless years. And that way of paying attention to someone, when you get it from a human being, is, I think, one of the most affecting things you can experience when someone really listens and is present to you. I don't think sees you. And I don't think that you experience it very often, because I don't think there's very many people who take the amount of time that Tolkien is talking about here to tend to their interior lives.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, your friend Dave, who I met when I was out there, is one of the guys who you like, wow, this guy is really like listening to who I am. He's not just listening to what I say. He's like listening to my like essence or something.
Big time.
And that's such a powerful thing. It's really a gift. And this, and then with Treebeard, I think it's even more pronounced, right? Because he's so old and so wise, and just
the oldest living thing.
Almost like looking into, some like pond you can't see the bottom of or something like that. It's
well said.
It's like a depth that reflects your own soul or something. But
yeah, it's interesting that bit that you just read. The speaker is actually Pippin in the future.
Oh, is that right? That's funny.
Yeah, it's like, and when Pippin, often afterwards, Pippin tried to describe his first impression of them. So it's like, you can imagine him almost like as an old man with young hobbit children at his feet, and there's a fire roaring. He's like, smoking old Toby, talking to them about the first time he met Treebeard.
Oh, yeah.
But there's such an eloquence to it. It's like, this is still Pippin's voice, but this is an older Pippin.
Yeah.
And the poetry of the way that he speaks, I think, is really beautiful.
It is.
It says, I don't know, but it felt as if something that grew in the ground, asleep, you might say, or just feeling itself as something between root tip and leaf tip, between deep earth and sky, had suddenly waked up and was considering you with the same slow care it had given to its own inside affairs for endless years. That's an all-timer sentence. Beautiful. That's right up there with the elf children peering, at their first sunrise. They ask Treebeard what his name is. And he's like, that would take a long time. Because there's a sense that for Ents, your name is not just the thing that people call you.
Right.
Your name tells the story of who you are.
Right.
As a person. So it's like, like I couldn't tell you my name. That would take, forever. Like, he's like, but people call me Treebeard, or Fangorn or whatever. You can call me that. And, Merry and Pippin are like, well, our names are Merry and Pippin. And he's like, whoa. Don't go giving out your names like that.
Yeah, Treebeard says, you'll be letting out your own right names if you're not careful. And Merry, this is like such a Hobbit thing to say. We aren't careful about that. As a matter of fact, I'm Merry Doc Brandybuck, and this is, and then Pippin says, I'm Peregrine Took.
But, they're out of they're out of the old lists, is what Mary says. He goes, we always seem to get left out of the old lists, but yeah, Treebeard like starts this rhyme and he's like, uh, learn now the lore of living creatures. First name the four, the free peoples, eldest of all the elf children. And then he lists all the, and he's like, Beaver the builder, Buck the leaper, Bear bee hunter, Boar the fighter. And he keeps going on and on and on. And there's no hobbits to be seen, obviously. I had a little fun fact about the way that he describes bear here.
Okay.
Bee hunter in Anglo-Saxon, you want to guess what that would be? Beowulf.
Oh, sure. Interesting.
So, like Beowulf in Anglo-Saxon Old English means like bee hunter, which means like bear.
Right.
So,
Cool.
I think that's a little nod from Tolkien, who was an expert in Beowulf.
Yeah,
so
his expertise. That's cool.
Pippin says, "Why not make a new line of the old list? Half-grown hobbits, the hole dwellers." How sweet is that?
I love it. Put us in amongst the four, next to man, the big people, and you've got it.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. It's like, you guys are quick-witted.
Yeah, right.
It's like, dang, did you guys just come up with that?
And then, he asks, who calls you hobbits, though? It doesn't sound elvish to me. And Pippin says, nobody calls us hobbits. We call ourselves that. That's beautiful.
So I think it's interesting. Treebeard, he asks the hobbits for news, essentially. He's like, what's been going on? He can tell that something's up in the world. He says, what's going on? What is Gandalf up to? And then he made a deep rumbling noise and said, these orcs and young Saruman down at Isengard. I like news, but not too quick now. So he's asking him, like, hey, tell me what's up. But Mary, ever the, brains of the operation, he's like, even if we try to be quick, it would take a long time to tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
But he goes, would you think it rude if we asked you what you were going to do with us and which side you are on? And did you know Gandalf? I think Treebeard's response is hilarious. He goes, I'm not going to do anything with you. Not if you mean by that, do something to you without your leave. We might do some things together. I don't know about sides. I go my own way, but your way may go along with mine for a while.
Yeah, I think that Treebeard sort of is comfortable with, like, fatedness. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, and he doesn't really see himself on a side, similar to Bombadil. He doesn't see himself on a side the same way that Merry and Pippin do. But he figures that, these little guys they've crossed paths, so they ought to see what that's about. Almost.
Yeah. It's almost like age allows you to realize that a swiftness to declare a side is kind of short-sighted, because someone who's on your side today may not be on your side tomorrow.
Right.
Saruman used to be on Fangorn's side and now he's not.
Yep.
But he has memories that stretch all the way back to the first Dark Lord, Melkor.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's seen, motivation shift and change, over the course of millennia. But yeah, he kind of decides that they're going to be, he's going to trust them. Like, he's like, these little guys, he can just kind of tell, I think, that they're, he almost jokingly says, you might be orcs, but I don't think so, back a little bit earlier.
Look like an orc.
Yeah.
You don't talk like an orc.
Yeah, you don't seem evil. So, I'm basically going to treat you like a friend until you prove me wrong, is kind of what he's saying. Like our ways might go the same direction eventually.
Right.
But, he still is holding on to them, and he's like, all right, we're going to go to my house. and that's when Mary is like, how long a trip is this going to be?
We're a little hungry, so
we don't really have that much food. So if it's a long trip, maybe you could do us a solid and give us a little bit of food. He goes, you need not trouble about that. I can give you a drink that will keep you green and growing for a long, long while. Right. And if we decide to part company, I can set you down outside my country at any point you choose. Let us go. So at this point now, I mean, he's about to show them hospitality, but he's even like, And if you decide that you don't want my hospitality anymore, I'm going to even be able to kind of take you wherever you want to go. So
Right.
I think he now realizes that, they're friends. I think it's interesting though, like the way that he's described walking through the forest really reminds me a lot of how Bombadil walked in the rain. Like, do you remember back in the Bombadil chapters how it's almost like the path like opens up for him?
Right. He can like walk through the rain without getting wet. Right.
Yeah, it says like many of the trees seemed to sleep, or as unaware of him as any other creature that merely passed by, but some quivered, and some raised up their branches above his head as he approached. All the while, as he walked, he talked to himself in a long running stream of musical sounds. So, yeah, I mean, again, like Treebeard and Bombadil are just so similar. And I think in the
They
films,
are.
Treebeard really takes the place of Bombadil. I think it was actually probably a pretty like deft piece of editing to cut Bombadil and lean into Treebeard because
Yeah.
they really have so many similarities. So Merry and Pippin start to tell the story, and they mention that they had gone through Lothlorien, and he says, "I'm surprised that you ever got out, but much more surprised that you ever got in. That has not happened to strangers for many a year. It is a queer
Yeah.
land." So it's funny, he talks about Lothlorien kind of the way that Celeborn talked about Fangorn.
Right. I wonder. I don't know. There's like a. I mean, they're pretty different places. Lothlorien is sort of like this perfectly manicured wood.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's no like shrubbery between the trunks of the trees because they're like taking care of it, and Fangorn has just kind of been, left to be wild, or maybe it's magically more wild or something because it's so old. I suppose too.
It was also like choked and stuffy.
Stuffy, yeah.
And there's an age to it. I mean, there's age to Lothlorien, but there's also a sense of like, Galadriel's sustaining power, kind of like changing the way that time moves. Here, it's like almost like decay. It's so old that Legolas says it makes him feel young.
Right.
He talks about this decay. Treebeard says there are trees and there are Ents. He says, I can't explain it to you. Some of us are still true Ents and living enough in our fashion, but many are growing sleepy, going tree-ish, as you might say. Most of the trees are just trees, of course, but many are half awake. Some are quite wide awake, and a few are, well, getting Entish. That is going on all the time. And he goes, and some have bad hearts. Yeah, that definitely reminds me of Old Man Willow.
Yeah, absolutely. Going Entish, for sure.
Sound is a bell and bad right through, he calls it.
Yeah, and then Mary says, like the old forest away to the north, you mean? And yeah, Fangorn knows about it. Aye, something like, but much worse.
And so, yeah, he's saying like, there's this like evil that has kind of infiltrated the wood. And he says there are hollow dales in this land where the darkness with a capital D has never been lifted, and the trees are older than I am. Still, we do what we can. We keep off strangers and the foolhardy, and we train and we teach. We walk and we weed. We are tree herds, we old Ents. And then he kind of talks about the origin of the Ents. He says elves began waking trees up and teaching them to speak and learning their tree talk. So the Ents themselves are kind of like the result of the magic and care of the elves. He says, then the great darkness came and they passed away over the sea. So, the elves who were in Middle Earth travel at the invitation of the Valar, which means the powers, by the way. And I think, you mentioned about how Treebeard said Saruman wanted to be a power. Like the word Valar means power. Yeah. And so he's basically saying like he wants to be
I see.
Like a god, essentially.
Yeah, he's not happy with just being like a lesser, like a angel, basically. He wants to rule over something.
Yeah, it's interesting. It says, the great darkness came, and they passed away over the sea, or fled into the far valleys, and hid themselves, and made songs about days that would never come again. There was all one wood once upon a time from here to the mountains of Lune, and this was just the east end. So he's basically saying, like, yeah, I mean, the old forest is Fangorn Forest. It's just been split.
Yeah, cut off.
I love this bit here. He says, Those were the broad days. Time was when I could walk and sing all day and hear no more than the echo of my own voice in the hollow hills. The woods were like the woods of Lothlorien, only thicker, stronger, younger. And the smell of the air, I used to spend a week just breathing.
Yeah, that's cool. Just go and stand and breathe.
So after about 70,000 Ent strides.
Yeah, which how far is that? I was sort of shocked by that number reading this time. Like,
Yeah.
70,000. That seems like a huge distance.
Yeah. But it seems like he's in great shape.
Well, they don't really get tired, I don't think.
Not in the same way as us, though.
They have to sleep, I guess, but they don't exactly tire.
But they finally get to their house, and this is where Merry and Pippin get their Ent Draught, which literally makes them grow, which I think is so funny.
Yeah, this is so great. There's more magic in this house than we've ever seen in Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
There's these two vessels full of magic, and it makes the leaves on the trees glow, and
they kind of like vibrate electrically.
And there's magical water.
Yeah, there's all kinds of magic here. There's this big stone table, but no chairs because he doesn't sit because he's not bendable. Treebeard lifted 2 great vessels and stood them on the table. They seemed to be filled with water, but he held his hands over them and immediately they began to glow, one with a golden and one with a rich green light. And the blending of the 2 lights lit the bay as if the sun of summer was shining through a roof of young leaves. That's awesome. He kind of just hovers his hands over the vessels. But I wonder what the difference between the 2 is. You have a green one and a golden one. Do they have, which do the hobbits drink?
Yeah, do they work together in some way? Or, because he gives them bowl, he doesn't drink from those either. They use bowls.
Yeah, there were several tall stone jars stood there with heavy lids. He removed one of the lids, dipped in a great ladle, and filled 3 bowls, 1 very large and 2 very small.
So he even stores water up. I mean, it's there. It's in a big vase or something. Yeah, I'd love to know more about the vessels that glow, the glowing vessels that make all the trees and stuff glow.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like those are the ones that he ladles out of, right? So
no, but the water is somehow magical.
It says, the effect of the draught began at the toes and rose steadily through every limb, bringing refreshment and vigor as it coursed upwards, right to the tips of the hair. Indeed, the hobbits felt the hair on their heads was actually standing up, waving and curling and growing.
That's funny.
It's interesting that the power from drinking it starts in your toes and works its way all the way up, which would be how the capillary action happens in a tree, right? It starts at the roots.
I noticed that too. It doesn't start in your stomach. It starts, even though you drink it, it starts in your toes.
And then he says, you can sit on the floor and I will lie down. That will prevent this drink from rising to my head and sending me to sleep.
Yeah, that's funny.
So there's something kind of alcoholic about it, which, we've talked about. Is this kind of the 3rd magic potion that we've had? Now we had the Mirrorvore of the elves, which they drink in the mountains.
Right.
Merry and Pippin got magic potion, terrible slug blood orc liquor. Then he even calls it liquor.
Yeah.
And then now the Ent Draught, he says he has to lay down or else it's going to rise to his head and make him fall asleep, which is also kind of an alcohol joke.
Right, absolutely.
So it seems like when magic potions are in Lord of the Rings, it's just spirits of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. So he lies down and then he asks the hobbits, "Tell me your tale and do not hurry."
Yeah, don't be hasty.
He wants to hear it all. And the hobbits begin in Hobbiton.
But they don't tell him about the ring, and he doesn't seem to ask.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
There's it's kind of his lack of hastiness. I think there's also a sense of privacy about Treebeard, where he's I'm not going to tell you my full name. It's kind of weird that you told me yours.
Yeah, right.
There's some things that are just not for me to know. And compare that to Grishnak and the others who we kind of talked about how they're quick to report on each other. And there seems to be this loose-lipped nature. the fact that Grishnak knows about Gollum and how he talks, and
Yeah, everybody knows everything.
everybody seems to kind of know everything because nobody is private. Nobody has
Right.
nobody can keep a secret. It says they said nothing whatever about the ring and did not tell him why they set out or where they were going to, and he did not ask for any reasons. I mean, that's kind of the whole point, right? It's like, why would you be going on this quest where you like end up in Rivendell and Lothlorien and, you know, you're getting abducted by orcs and taken to Isengard? Like, there's got to be a reason for all this, but he just doesn't ask.
You would think that, you know, the Black Riders, maybe he would like draw conclusions.
This got something to do with Mordor.
Yeah, about that. And
Young Sauron's wrapped up in it, which can't make it good.
yeah, right. But he's just not too concerned about it. It says that he made them describe the Shire and its country over and over again.
Yeah. He's like, this sounds awesome.
Yeah, and he's like, do you ever see any ants around there?
Yeah. It's like, hey, can I ask you a question? Okay, I mean, we've talked about horniness in Lord of the Rings. All right.
Yeah, right.
Horniest is definitely Shadowfax and Gandalf.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second is Gimli's weird hair fetish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Third, Bombadil and Goldberry. Like, you know, they'd be getting into some stuff.
I might even put them above. I might put them above Gandalf and Shadowfax. I don't know. I think they're getting down as much as they can.
Constant.
Yeah.
Constant. On the regular. But my guy, Treebeard, is pining for these Entwives. There's one that he mentions, like, in particular about how lovely she is.
Yeah, he mentions her a lot.
Yeah, Treebeard is, like, down bad for one of these Entwives in particular. He talks about Fimberthil a lot and how lovely and fair she was. But they're telling him about the Shire, and he's like, you never seen any Ents around there, do you? And he's like, well, not Ents, Entwives, I should really say. And they're like, no, I mean, we haven't seen any Ents or Entwives up by us. I mean, and he's like, yeah, they would like your country. So I just wondered, how sweet is that? So Treebeard is just kind of taking it all in. And he's like, that's a bundle of news and no mistake. Up sprouted little folk that are not in the old lists, and behold, the 9 forgotten riders reappear to hunt them, and Gandalf takes them on a great journey, and Galadriel harbors them in Caras Galadhon, and orcs pursue them down all the leagues of Wilderland. Indeed, they seem to be caught up in a great storm. I hope they weather it.
It's kind of like Éomer. Éomer's like,
yeah,
all these things are happening like out of myth and legend, and I don't exactly know what to do with it, but it seems like I should try to get out of the way.
Yeah, and ironically, like, Treebeard is a legend to Éomer, you know what I mean? And
yeah, absolutely.
They're both kind of just like incredulous these things are happening. And that's when, you know, they've already asked him, like, back when they first said, like, you know, what are you going to do with this? You know, like, hey, let's get real here. Like, basically, you're going to squash us? And he's like, they say, like, and whose side are you on? And he kind of pushes that off until he hears their story, really. And he says, I'm not altogether on anybody's side because nobody is altogether on my side, if you understand me. Nobody cares for the woods as I care for them, not even the elves nowadays.
Nobody's altogether on my side. It's kind of like we were talking about, that people just sort of ignore
nature.
trees.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's like, you know, the wizards, you know, Gandalf cares about trees.
Yeah.
But Saruman doesn't. And it seems to be that that's the part of the story that they've just told that he finds most disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he's known for a while that Saruman has something about him. But now he starts to be like, you know, I can't overlook this anymore. You know, that's where he gets into the bit we mentioned earlier about Saruman being a neighbor. And we get a little bit into like the lore of like wizards here. You know, so it says Saruman is a wizard. More than that, I cannot say. I do not know the history of wizards. They appeared first after the great ships came over the sea. But if they came with the ships, I never can tell.
Mm.
So basically he's like, you know, after the Númenóreans came and founded Gondor and Arnor, that's like when the wizards first showed up. And he talks about how, you know, Saruman became a neighbor, and he used to give no trouble to his neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to talk to Treebeard, and he seemed to have the forest's best interests in mind. But then, you know, now, especially having heard what Merry and Pippin say, he goes, he is plotting to become a power.
Yeah.
He has a mind of metal and wheels, and he does not care for growing things, except as far as they serve him for the moment.
The more he goes on about Saruman and the orcs and, what they've been getting up to in Isengard, which is felling trees and not to use them. And that comes up a couple times in the chapter where Treebeard can kind of understand why you would cut down a tree to build a house or to light a fire.
Yeah.
But to cut down a tree just to leave it rot he says, orc mischief.
Yeah.
And so he gets her lather up, and finally he's like, curse him, root and branch. Many of those trees were my friends, creatures I had known from nut and acorn. Many had voices of their own. They're lost forever now. And there are wastes of stump and bramble where once there were singing groves. I have been idle. Now he starts to become self-recriminating. I let things slip. It must stop.
And then he says, I will stop it.
The hobbits don't have to convince him.
Not much.
They just tell him the story. They're like, this is what's going on. Now you have a fuller picture of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the fatedness here, I think, like Merry and Pippin going into the forest and meeting Treebeard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Treebeard gets a fuller picture of the world. He doesn't even need to know about how dire it really is with the ring.
Mm-hmm.
He just sort of needs to know about his neighborhood. And and he, for a guy who's not hasty, he gets into this place where he starts, he yells, I will stop it, and you shall come with me. You may be able to help me.
Yeah.
You'll be helping your own friends that way too, for if Saruman is not checked, Rohan and Gondor will have an enemy behind as well as in front. Our roads go together.
To Isengard.
So great.
It's interesting because he kind of he's realized that he's not following his own advice, which is he's being hasty.
Yeah.
Well, Merry and Pippin, they're like, hell yeah, Treebeard. Come up, Treebeard. they're like, let's go. Mary's like, heck yeah, we're coming with you. That's not an exact quote. We'll do what we can, which I love.
Yeah.
It's like they are not great warriors, but they're gonna do what they can. And Pippin's like, I should like to see the White Hand overthrown. I should like to be there, even if I cannot be of much use. I shall never forget Ugluk and the crossing of Rohan. So he's like, payback's a let's go. Like they're gonna feel it. But that's when maybe it's like hearing them be like, yeah, the White Hand shall be overthrown. And he's like, whoa. I know I talked a big game just now, but it's easier to yell stop than I actually do it.
I love that line. It's easier to shout stop than to do it.
Yeah.
I've felt the need to say that in a few organizing spaces.
It's like,
I'm like,
whoa, yeah.
Somebody actually has to do the dishes on this stuff. You know what I mean? Like we can't just march around. But he's not stopping. He's just becoming less hasty, right? He's like, okay, let me think about this for a second. What do I actually have to do to make this happen?
Yeah.
Because he can't do it on his own. But he takes stock, right? He takes stock of who he knows and where they are. And
he starts kind of counting them on his fingers. Did you notice they all start with F?
Yeah. Fangorn, Finglas, Fladrift. But then we get Skinbark and Leaflock also.
Well, he says that's what you would call them.
Yeah, that's right. Tolkien's always translating for us. It's really interesting.
And he's like, what a pity there are so few of us. And Pippin is like, asking a pretty standard question. He's like, hey, you guys have been here a long time. Like, what you been up to? Like, have you not been making little intinks, little imp babies? He says, why are there so few when you've lived in this country so long? Have a great many died? And Treebeard's like, some have died because of just the evil turning of the world, evil chances of the long years have taken a few out. And some have just, stopped being Ents and just grown tree-ish. They've gone back to being trees. He says, there have been no Entings, no children, you would say, not for a terrible long count of years. You see, we lost the Entwives. And Pippin so kindly is just like, oh, how very sad. How was it that they all died? They did not die, said Treebeard. I never said died. We lost them, I said. We lost them and we cannot find them. I thought all folks knew that. So it's interesting how like he's making a semantic difference between lost and died in the way that people use softer language around death.
Yeah, right.
You know, to say like someone passed or someone was lost. They breathe their last, you know.
Yeah, he seems to really assume that or maybe that's his hope, that the Entwives are really out there somewhere.
Yeah, that everybody knows about the Entwives. What do you think happened to the Entwives?
Well, there was some kind of war big enough to turn the land from some kind of prosperous garden into the brown land. So it's almost like a nuclear fallout or something like that. There's like
that's a really interesting way to put it. I mean, so it seems like, I think we kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think it's kind of worth going down into more detail. So the Ents have been around since the first age, which means they've been around since Melkor. And it says when darkness with a capital D came in the north, which is where Melkor's strongholds were, it says they crossed the great river, and that's when they made their gardens. But then it says that Sauron came, and that's when their gardens were turned into the brown lands. It says, I remember it was a long time ago, in the time of the war between Sauron and the men of the sea. Desire came over me to see Fimbrethil again. Yeah, I'm sure it did. Very fair she was still in my eyes when I had last seen her, though little like the Ent maiden of old. For the Entwives were bent and browned by their labor, their hair parched by the sun to the hue of ripe corn, and their cheeks like red apples. Yet their eyes were still the eyes of our own people. So they go looking for them. They call them by their beautiful names, and they ask all the folk that they come across. And, you know, some say they went this way, some say they went that way, but they can't find them. And it says, we believe that we will meet again in a time to come, and perhaps we shall find somewhere a land where we can live together and both be content. But it is foreboded that that will only be when we have both lost all that we now have. And it may well be that that time is drawing near at last. For if Sauron of old destroyed the gardens, the enemy today seems likely to wither all the woods. It's a little bit of like Entish eschatology there.
Yeah, I think there's a way in which like eschatology only really plays at like the end of hope or something like that, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or it's a final hope, because the idea that the Ents and the Entwives are actually truly going to reunite. Yeah, probably not in the cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wonder. It's interesting that it kind of takes Sauron to really like finally put the finishing touches on the Entwives. Even Melkor couldn't exactly do that.
And that was a long time ago too. I mean, we're talking like a couple thousand years ago.
Yeah, I wonder if there isn't some way in which these tended gardens and like farmland were not as resilient as
the forest.
But now is sort of like the final chance for Sauron to like really destroy it all, right?
Yeah.
And so he could destroy the Entwives and their peace and their order and their plenty, but it's taken some time to get to a place where, you know, the final stroke is gonna come.
Yeah. You know, one thing that we kind of skipped over talking about the Dark Lord, Melkor, is so Sauron's boss, Satan. He creates the trolls in mockery of the Ents.
Yeah, he says that later on, I think. I feel like it's toward the end of the chapter. Yeah, here it is. Mary says, will you really break the doors of Isengard? This is after the Entmoot. He says, well, we could, you know. You do not know perhaps how strong we are. Maybe you've heard of trolls. They are mighty strong. But trolls are only counterfeits made by the enemy in the great darkness, in mockery of Ents, as orcs were of elves. We're stronger than trolls. We're made of the bones of the earth.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome. So that goes back to that idea that Sauron and Melkor, they're just
can't create anything.
Yeah, they can't create. They can only twist something that's already been created.
Yeah.
They don't even have their own ideas. Like Sauron's like, oh, those Ents are pretty big and strong. Why don't I make a troll? You know?
Yeah. And it's almost like, it's interesting, like Treebeard doesn't say like the elves created us. Like he says, like the elves woke us up.
Yeah, they were already
God created the trees,
right.
and the elves just kind of like worked with God to
Right.
like kind of like show them that they could move through the world in a different way.
Yeah.
They like inspire them, but they don't create them. And I think that's like Sauron and Melkor both, they want to be God, but they can't actually create anything other than like twisted, evil slaves. So the little guys go to bed, and Treebeard's like, "You can lay down. I'm going to go stand in the rain." That's awesome. I love that. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go stand in the rain for a while. And they sleep. They're, safe. And so they're able to sleep well. They drink some more of that good Ent drank, and then they eat some limbus more because they felt that eating was a necessary part of breakfast than because they felt hungry, which I think is so funny.
So good. I mean,
classic.
Tolkien has such a clear idea of what a hobbit is. It's beautiful.
Yeah, they would not be fine with just drinking something for breakfast. They have to have something solid.
Chew on something. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Come on. And then Treebeard comes back and he's like, "Oh man, sleepyheads! I've already walked a ton of Ent strides this morning while y'all were sleeping."
Yeah.
But he says that they're going to have an Ent moot, and an Ent moot is exactly what it sounds like.
And meat. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Great Dingle.
The Dern Dingle. So do you know what Dern Dingle means? I looked it up.
No.
Do you want to guess?
No.
I know you love it when I ask you questions I know the answer to.
I don't want to guess. I don't want to guess. You just tell me.
So Dern means hidden or secret.
Laura Dern. Interesting. Okay.
Dern. And then Dingle means a wooded area. So Dern Dingle means like a hidden wood.
The hidden woods. Interesting.
There's almost a sense that like a dingle is also like got like a rounded, it's like a bowl. So you're like kind of like inside, kind of hidden from all sides.
And then you go down. Yeah.
And you're like kind of surrounded by a raised area on all sides.
Yeah, interesting.
But we get Dern later on in the story in Durnhelm, which is the name that Eowyn takes, when she's riding with the Riders of Rohan to the aid of Gondor. Right. And she needs to be hidden. So, Durnhelm means like hidden under your helm. So it's kind of a perfect name for her too. So Durndingle, Durnhelm. But he calls all the other Ents to him by raising his hands to his mouth and making a hollow tube and blowing through them. How sick is that?
Yeah, he's got like a little natural trumpet. So cool.
Like you can kind of...
It's so good. Fatty Bulger.
Fatty Bulger. So all the different Ents come up, but they're all like, they look all like different trees. They look like different species of trees.
Yeah.
It says that they are all the same kindred and had the same eyes. Not all so old or so deep as Treebeards, but all with the same slow, steady, thoughtful expression and the same green flicker. So Merry and Pippin, they're listening to this meeting of the Ents, and obviously they can't understand the language. And it's like slow and sonorous, and you can just imagine like Merry and Pippin like just kind of like nodding off. Yeah. And it says that Pippin starts to wonder what Ent for no and yes is, so that he can try and follow the conversation, but it's useless. So Treebeard comes up to them and says, hey, my Pippin. You are a hasty folk, I am forgetting. Anyways, wearisome listening to a speech you don't understand. So he says, you and Merry can stroll about the dingle if you like.
Yeah, just wander around. It's a safe place.
There's some words to speak really before the mood even really gets started. So you guys should just kind of, go off and do your own thing, and I'll come and see you again and tell you how things are going.
Right.
And, we were talking last time about like the character of Merry and how like the detail of the fact that Merry is just like really good at maps and like knows where things are naturally. But at this point, Pippin says, I wonder where Isengard is. And Merry says, I don't know quite where we are, but that peak is probably Mithadras. And as far as I can remember, the ring of Isengard lies in a fork or a deep cleft at the end of the mountains. It's probably down behind this great ridge. There seems to be a smoke or a haze over there, left at the peak, don't you think? So yeah, Mary is just smart, man. Mary knows a lot about maps and things.
Yeah, he did all that work at Rivendell, and it really paid off, for him to do that
Yeah.
because he actually knows something about where they are and what it might be like, and he even knows that there's like a stream running through it. He comes down through the mountains and flows across the camp of Rohan. And they're still wondering, like, could these Ents be roused? They don't like to be roused.
So they're sitting there by themselves for a long while, but Treebeard eventually comes and checks back in with them. I forgot to mention earlier that when they were in the very beginning of the moot, the Ents decided that the hobbits were not orcs. So, they're in the clear there. But he goes, "We have finished the first stage now, but I've still got to explain things again to those who live a long way away, far off from Isengard." But he says that he has brought them a companion. And he says his name is Bregalad, but that's translated as Quick Beam. And he was called that because he answered a question before another Ent was finished asking. And so they thought he was hasty, but he's like a younger Ent. And Treebeard talks about how hasty it is, but I think it's really funny that he says you ought to get along really well together because you're both like young and hasty. Essentially, he's like goodbye, and he leaves. And then it says Bregalad stood for some time surveying the hobbits solemnly, and they looked at him, wondering when he would show any signs of hastiness.
That's great.
So he's just like staring him down, and then eventually he's like, my friends, let's go for a walk. So yeah, even the hastiest Ent is slow.
Yeah, slow, exactly.
Compared to us.
I like that it says that Quick Beam often laughed.
Yeah, just say everything, right?
They just sort of walk around the forest. He like sings to some trees and things like that. But it says, all day they walked about, and in the woods with him, singing and laughing, for Quickbeam often laughed. He laughed if the sun came out from behind a cloud. He laughed if they came upon a stream or a spring. Then he stooped and splashed his feet and head with water. He laughed sometimes at some sound or whisper in the trees. Whenever he saw a rowan tree, he halted a while with his arms stretched out and sang, and swayed as he sang. So he's like good at just enjoying nature,
Yeah, and he talks about how much he loves birds.
That's so great.
Yeah, he's a great character. I love Quickbeam. We don't get enough Quickbeam.
They go to his house, same kind of setup as Fangorn's house.
It seems like just a safe, another great place for them to like just chill out.
So the third day breaks, and apparently they're close enough to hear that the Ents' voices rise to a great clamor and then die down again.
Yeah.
So something has happened.
Yeah.
Even though it still says the morning wore on. So something big has happened, and then the morning continues.
It's almost like the water's starting to boil.
Yeah, it's not an all at once type of thing.
The pot's starting to shake, the lid's starting to shake.
Right. And then Quickbeam is listening intently.
Yeah. Standing erect.
Yeah, he sort of like realizes something is going on. And even the whole forest stands in listening silence. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Ent voices had stopped. What did that mean? Bregalad was standing up and erect and tense, looking back northward toward the Durndingle.
Yeah.
And then here come the Ents. It's like so exciting.
And there's hooms and there's booms and there's drum da da bums and they are marching to war. It says before long they saw the marching line approaching. The Ents were swinging along with great strides down the slope towards them. Treebeard was at their head, and some 50 followers were behind him, 2 abreast.
It's a lot. It's always more than what I've imagined. Like when he gives us a number, like that was true. Yeah. That was true when they were, with the orcs. I was like, oh, geez, it's like 300 orcs,
Yeah.
And then I was imagining like maybe like a couple dozen trees, but it's like 50 of them.
I wouldn't want to be on the business end of
no, absolutely
50 Ents.
Not.
So Bregalad is like, he's thrilled. Part of the reason why Treebeard brought Bregalad to Am I saying his name right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bregalad to Merry Pippin because he'd already decided. He's like, oh, I'm ready to fight.
He's
Like,
pissed off because someone killed his friends a long time ago. You know,
he's like,
ready to,
yes,
ready
say
to go
less.
for a
Like,
while.
yeah, it's yeah, like I've already made my decision. You guys keep talking. So he's like thrilled, but he passes Merry and Pippin back to Treebeard. So Merry and Pippin are now at the front of this like war party,
Yeah, that's awesome.
like going off to war. It says the old Ent now took the hobbits back and set them on his shoulders again. So they rode proudly at the head of the singing company with beating hearts and heads held high. It says it seemed now as sudden as the bursting of a flood that had long been held back by a dike. So that's like what Merry and Pippin do. You know, they come in and they're like an accelerant. They're just
Absolutely.
like we're just gonna like get this thing going. That's like their whole. It's what they do. I mean, think about it. Like they're just like a dry. Like they cause chaos. You know, like and that chaos gets things going. Like Pippin dropping something down the well in Moria gets things going.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly.
Pippin is about to like mess around with the Palantir, and that gets things going. It's like inciting action always. They're like little chaos agents.
Yeah.
But I said that had not happened in the forest since the wars of Sauron and the Men of the Sea. So it's been a couple thousand years since the Ents have been roused like this.
Yeah.
And let's end on this bit. So you know they're marching to Isengard, and I just love this. That Fangorn says to the hobbits. Says, of course, it is likely enough, my friends, likely enough that we are going to our doom, the last march of the Ents. But if we stayed at home and did nothing, doom would find us anyway, sooner or later. That thought has long been growing in our hearts, and that is why we are marching now. Now at last, the last march of the Ents may be worth a song. He says, I should dearly have liked to see Fimbrethil again, but they are my friends. Songs like trees bear fruit only in their own time, in their own way, and sometimes they are withered untimely. It's like the forest is like vibrating with the presence of this party moving through them, and you know the hobbits even speculate that it looks like the forest was rising and marching over the hills to war.
Tolkien finally gets his
Macbeth
scene, and he tells it so. I mean, just tells it so well. It's so exciting. And as they march toward Saruman, Treebeard says, "Night lies over Isengard." So badass.
I love it. I love it.
So good. Well, thank you for reading along with us. Join us next week for Book 3, Chapter 5 of The Two Towers, The White Rider. If you want to help us out, share this podcast with a Lord of the Rings fan in your life. Follow us in all the places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Leave a review. It helps the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube and visit us at waywardwizards.com for more info.
We'll see you next week.